Alright, hello citizens of the Nigelverse. It is Nigel once again, and welcome back to the Labyrinth. This is the first of a 5-part series that I'm going to be doing on the channel. And this is going to be a reading, a very long reading that I decided to split up into 5 parts because there's 5 acts to this, and that's because this is a play that we're going to be reading. Not just any play, considered by many to be the ultimate love story. I am, of course, talking about Romeo and Juliet. I haven't read this in its entirety since I think high school, which is yet another case of me pawning off my high school English literature work onto you guys. But we're gonna read through it and we're gonna see truly how well it holds up. Is it truly the ultimate love story? We're gonna find out, of course. There's like I said, there's 5 acts, and sometimes the amount of scenes do do vary on the act, but we're getting into Act 1 here, but first we also have a prologue here, so we're going to read the prologue first. So it says, "Enter chorus. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventured piteous overthrows doth with their death bury their parents' strife. The fearful passage of their death-marked love, and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but her children's end not could remove, is now the 2 hours' traffic of our stage. The which, if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend." Alright, so now we get into Act 1, Scene 1. And we also have a list of characters in the play, but I don't think I'm going to read them off. We'll get to them But, so now we're getting to Act 1, Scene 1. Alright, so here's the synopsis. A street fight breaks out between the Montagues and the Capulets, which is broken up by the ruler of Verona, Prince Aeschylus. He threatens the Montagues and Capulets with death if they fight again. A melancholy Romeo enters and is questioned by his cousin Benvolio, who learns that the cause of Romeo's sadness is unrequited love. So enter Samson and Gregory, with swords and bucklers of the house of Capulet. And Samson starts off here. "Gregory, on my word, will not carry coals. No, for then we should be coilers. I mean, and we be in choler will draw. I, while you live, draw your neck out of collar. I strike quickly, being moved, but thou art not quickly moved to strike. A dog of the house of Montague moves me. To move is to stir, and to be valiant is to stand. Therefore, if thou art moved, thou runn'st away. A dog of that house shall move me to stand. I will take the wall of any man or maid of Montague's. That shows thee a weak slave, for the weakest goes to the wall. 'Tis true, and therefore women, being the weaker vessels, are ever thrust to the wall. Therefore I will push Montague's men from the wall, and thrust his maids to the wall. The quarrel is between our masters and us their men. 'Tis all one. I will show myself a tyrant. When I have fought with the men, I will be civil with the maids. I will cut off their heads." The heads of the maids? Aye, the heads of the maids, or their maiden heads. Take it in what sense thou wilt. They must take it in sense that feel it. Me they shall feel while I am able to stand, and 'tis known I am a pretty piece of flesh. 'Tis well thou art not fish. If thou hast been poor John, draw thy tool. Here comes of the house of Montagues. So enter Abram with another serving man. "My naked weapon is out. Quarrel, I will back thee. How? Turn thy back and run. How? Turn thy back and run? Fear me not. No, Mary, I fear thee. Let us take the law of our sides. Let them begin. I will frown as I pass by, and let them take it as they list, nay, as they dare. I will bite my thumb at them, which is disgrace to them if they bear it. And he bites his thumb. Do you bite your thumb at us, sir? I do bite my thumb, sir. Do you bite your thumb at us, sir? Samson, and aside to Gregory, is the law of our side if I say I, and Gregory and aside to Samson, no. Oh, no, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir, but I bite my thumb, sir. Will you quarrel, sir? Quarrel, sir? No, sir. But if you do, sir, I am for you. I serve as good a man as you. No better. Well, sir. Well, sir. And then entered Benvolio. Oh, and Gregory and aside to Samson. I think I might just say the characters' names before saying their dialogue because I do try to vary up the voices, but it can get a little confusing. But so Gregory, he and aside to Samson says, "Say better. Here comes one of my master's kinsmen." And Samson, "Yes, better, sir. Abram, you lie." Hey, Samson, draw. Ah, if you be men. Gregory, remember the washing blow. Oh, remember thy washing blow. And they fight. And Benvolio, "Part, fools," drawing his sword. "Put up your swords. You know not what you do." Enter Tybalt, drawing his sword. And Tybalt, "What art thou drawn among these heartless hinds? Turn thee, Benvolio, look upon thy death." Benvolio, "I do but keep the peace. Put up thy sword, or manage it to part these men with me." Tybalt, "What, drawn and talk of peace? I hate the word, as I hate hell, all Montagues, and thee. Have at thee, coward." They fight. Enter 3 or 4 citizens with clubs or parsons, and the citizens say, "Clubs, bills, and parsons, strike, beat them down, down with the Capulets, down with the Montagues." Enter old Capulet in his gown and his wife, and old Capulet says, "What noise is this? Give me my long sword, ho." And wow, you definitely can't say it nowadays. Yeah, I know that's not what he means, but Lady Capulet says, a crutch. Why call you for a sword?" Enter old Montague and his wife. And old Capulet says, "My sword, I say. Old Montague is come and flourishes his blade in spite of me." And old Montague says, "Thou villain Capulet, hold me not, let me go." And Lady Montague says, "Thou shalt not stir 1 foot to seek a foe." And enter Prince Aeschylus with his train, and the prince says, "Rebellious subjects, enemies to peace, profaners of this neighbor-stained steel, will they not hear? What ho! You men, you beasts, that quench the fire of your pernicious rage, with purple fountains issuing from your veins, on pain of torture, from those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground, and hear the sentence of your moved prince. 3 civil brawls bred of an airy word, by thee, old Capulet and Montague, have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets, and made Verona's ancient citizens cast by their grave beseeming ornaments, to wield old partisans in hands as old, cankered with peace, to part your cankered hates. If ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. For this time all the rest depart away. You, Capulet, shall go along with me, and Montague, come you this afternoon, to know our farther pleasure in this case, to old Freetown, our common judgment place, is once more on pain of death, all men depart." And then all but Montague, Lady Montague, and Benvolio exits. And then Montague to Benvolio says, "Who set this ancient quarrel new abroach? Speak, nephew, were you by when it began?" And then Benvolio says, Here were the servants of your adversary, and yours close fighting ere I did approach. I drew to part them. In the instant came the fiery Tybalt with his sword prepared, which, as he breathed defiance to my ears, he swung about his head and cut the winds, and who nothing hurt withal, hissed him in scorn. While we were interchanging thrusts and blows, came more and more, and fought on part in part, till the prince came, who parted either part. And Lady Montague says, "Oh, where's Romeo? Saw you him today? Right glad I am he was not at this fray." And then Benvolio says, "Madam, an hour before the worshipped sun peered forth the golden window of the east, a troubled mind drove me to walk abroad, where underneath the grove of sycamore, that westward rooteth from the city side, so early walking did I see your son. Towards him I made, but he was ware of me, and stole into the covert of the wood, I, measuring his affections by my own, which then most sought where most might not be found, being one too many by my weary self, pursued my humour, not pursuing his, and gladly shunned who gladly fled from me." And then Montague says, "Many a morning hath he there been seen, with tears augmenting the fresh morning's dew, adding to clouds more clouds with his deep sighs. But all so soon as the all-cheering sun should in the farthest east begin to draw the shady curtains from Aurora's bed, away from light steals home my heavy son, and private in his chambers pens himself, shuts up his windows, locks fair daylight out, and makes himself an artificial night. Black and poorness must this humour prove, unless good counsel may the cause remove." And Benvolio says, "My noble uncle, do you know the cause?" And Montague says, "As I neither know it nor can learn of him." And then Benvolio says, "Have you importuned him by any means?" And Montague says, "Both by myself and many other friends. But he, his own affection's counsellor, is to himself, I will not say how true, but to himself so secret and so close, so far from sounding and discovery, as is the bud hit with an envious worm, ere he can spread his sweet leaves to the air, or dedicate his beauty to the same. Could we but learn from whence his sorrows grow, we would as willingly give cure as know." And enter Romeo. Oh, and Benvolio says, "See where he comes, so please you, step aside. I'll know his grievance, or be much denied." And then Montague says, would thou wert so happy by thy stay, to hear true shrift. Come, madam, let's away." And Montague and Lady Montague exit. And then Benvolio says, "Good morrow, cousin." And Romeo says, "Is the day so young?" And Benvolio says, "But new struck 9. And Romeo says, "Ay me, sad hours seem long. Was that my father that went hence so fast?" As Benvolio says, "It was. What sadness lengthens Romeo's hours?" And Romeo says, "Not having that which having makes them short." And Benvolio says, "In love?" And Romeo says, "Out." And Benvolio says, "Of love?" And Romeo says, "Out of her favor where I am in love." And Benvolio says, "Alas, that love, so gentle in his view, should be so tyrannous and rough in proof." And Romeo says, "Alas, that love, whose view is muffled still, should without eyes see pathways to his will. Where shall we dine? Oh me, what fray was here? Yet tell me not, for I have heard it all. Here's much to do with hate, but more with love. Why then, O brawling love, O loving hate, O anything of nothing first, create? O heavy lightness, serious vanity, misshapen chaos of well-seeming forms, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health, still waking sleep that is not what it is. This love feel I, that feel no love in this. Dost thou not laugh?" And Benvolio says, "No, 'cause I rather weep." And Romeo says, "Good heart, at what?" And Benvolio says, "At thy good heart's oppression." And Romeo says, "Why, such is love's transgression. Griefs of mine own lie heavy in my breast, which thou wilt propagate to have it pressed. As with more of thine, this love that thou hast shown doth add more grief to too much of mine own. Love is a smoke made with the fume of sighs, being purged, a fire sparkling in lovers' eyes, being vexed, a sea nourished with loving tears. What is it else? A madness most discreet, a choking gall, and a preserving sweet. Farewell, my coz." Benvolio says, "So oft I will go along, and if you leave me so, you do me wrong." And Romeo says, "Tut, I have lost myself. I am not here. This is not Romeo. He's some other where." And Benvolio says, "Tell me in sadness, who is that you love?" And Romeo says, "What, shall I groan and tell thee?" And Benvolio says, "Groan? Why no, but sadly tell me who?" And Romeo says, "A sick man in sadness makes his will, a word ill urged to one that is so ill. In sadness, cousin, I do love a woman." And Benvolio says, "I aim so near where, and I suppose you love." And Romeo says, "A right good markman, and she's fair, her I love." And Benvolio says, "A right fair mark, fair cause is soonest hit." And Romeo says, "As well in that hit you miss. She'll not be hit with Cupid's arrow. She hath Dian's wit, and in strong proof of chastity well armed. From love's weak childish bow she lives uncharmed. She will not stay the siege of loving terms, nor by the encounter of assailing eyes, nor ope her lap to paint seducing gold. Oh, she is rich in beauty, only poor, that when she dies, with beauty dies her store." And Benvolio says, "Then she hath sworn that she will still live chaste?" And Romeo says, "She hath, and that sparring makes huge waste. For beauty, starved with her severity, cuts beauty off from all prosperity. She is too fair, too wise, wisely too fair, to merit bliss by making me despair. She has forsworn to love, and in that vow do I live dead that live to tell it now." And Benvolio says, "Be ruled by me, forget to think of her." And Romeo says, "Oh, teach me how I should forget to think." And Benvolio says, "By giving liberty unto thine eyes, examine other beauties." And Romeo says, "'Tis the way to call hers exquisite and question more. These happy masks that kiss fair ladies' brows, being black, puts us in mind they hide the fair. He that has strucken blind cannot forget the precious treasure of his eyesight lost. Show me a mistress that is passing fair. What doth her beauty serve but as a note where I may read who passed that passing fair? Farewell, thou canst not teach me to forget." And Benvolio says, "I'll pay that doctrine or else die in debt." So that is Act 1 done, and it is a bit lengthy, but we're starting to see why. We're seeing that the Montagues and the Capulets do hate each other. We've been introduced to some characters, including Romeo, and his plight, the fact that he's either loves a girl or is in love with a girl and she doesn't love him back, or he's going through a breakup, which sadly I've related to both. But yeah, so kind of just but now we move into scene 2. Alright, so the synopsis here is: in conversation with Capulet, Count Paris declares his wish to marry Juliet. Capulet invites him to a party that night. Capulet gives a servant the guest list for the party and orders him off to issue invitations. The servant cannot read the list and asks for help from Romeo and Benvolio. When they find out that Rosaline, on whom Romeo dotes, is invited to the party, they decide to go too. So enter Capulet, County Paris, and a serving man. And Capulet says, "But Montague is bound as well as I, in penalty alike, and 'tis not hard, I think, for men so old as we to keep the peace." And Paris says, "Of honorable reckoning are you both, and pity 'tis you lived at odds so long. But now, my lord, what say you to my suit?" And Capulet says, "But saying o'er what I have said before, my child is yet a stranger in the world. She hath not seen the change of 14 years. Let 2 more summers wither in their pride, ere we may think her ripest to be a bride." And Paris says, "Younger than she are happy mother's maid." And Capulet said, "And too soon are those so early made. Earth hath swallowed all my hopes but she's the hopeful lady of my earth. But woo her, gentle Paris, get her heart. My will to her consent is but a part, and she agreed within her scope of choice. Lies my consent in fair courting voice. This night I hold an old accustomed feast, whereto I have invited many a guest, such as I love, and you among the store. One more, most welcome, makes my number more. At my poor house look to behold this night, earth-treading stars that make dark heaven light, such comfort as do lusty young men feel when well-apparelled April on the heel of limping winter treads, even such delight. Among fresh fennel buds shall you see this night. Inherit at my house, hear all see, I should say, and like her most whose merit most shall be, which on more view of many, mine being one, may stand in number, though in reckoning none. Come go with me, to serving man, give him a list. Alright, to serving man, giving him a list. So he's saying this to the serving man. But go, sirrah, trudge about through fair Verona, find those persons out whose names are written there, and to them say, my house and welcome on their pleasure stay. And then Capulet and Paris exit, and the serving man says, find them out whose names are written here. It is written that the shoemaker should meddle with his yard, and the tailor with his last, the fisher with his pencil, and the painter with his nets. But I am sent to find those persons whose names are here writ, and can never find what names the writing person hath here writ. I must to the learned in good time. And then enter Benvolio and Romeo. And then Benvolio to Romeo says, tut, man, one fire burns out another's burning. One pain is lessened by another's anguish. Turn giddy, and be helped by backward turning. Art one desperate grief cures with another's languish. Take thou some new infection to thy eye, and the rank poison of the old will die. And Romeo says, your plantain leaf is excellent for that. And then Benvolio says, for what, I pray thee? And Romeo says, for your broken shin. And then Benvolio says, why, Romeo, art thou mad? And Romeo says, not mad, but bound more than a madman is, shut up in prison, kept without my food, whipped and tormented, and good evening, good fellow. And Sir Man says, good God ye good evening. A bit like old English, but I pray, sir, can you read? And Romeo says, I, mine own fortune in my misery. And Sir Man says, perhaps you have learned it without book, but I pray, can you read anything you see? And Romeo says, I, if I know the letters in the language. And Sir Man says, you say honestly, rest you merry. And Romeo says, stay, fellow, I can read. So he reads the letter. Signor Martino and his wife and daughters, County Anseline and his beauteous sisters, the lady widow of Virtuvio, Signor Placentio and his lovely nieces, Mercutio and his brother Valentine, mine uncle Capulet, his wife and daughters, my fair niece Rosaline and Livia, Signor her Valentino and his cousin Tybalt, Lucio and the lively Helena, a fair assembly. Whither should they come? And Sir Man says, up. And Romeo says, whither? To supper? And Sir Man says, to our house. And Romeo says, whose house? And Sir Man says, my master's. And Romeo says, indeed, I should have asked thee that before. And Sir Man says, now I'll tell you without asking. My master is the great rich Capulet, and if you be not of the house of Montagues, I pray come and crush a cup of wine. Rest you merry. And then he exits. And Benvolio says, at this same ancient feast of Capulets sups the fair Rosaline, whom thou so loves, with all the admired beauties of Verona. Go thither, and with unattained eye compare her face with some that I shall show, and I will make thee think thy swan a crow. And Romeo says, within the devout religion of mine I maintain such falsehood, then turn tears to fire, and these who, often drowned, could never die. Transparent heretics be burnt for liars. One fairer than my love, the all-seeing sun, ne'er saw her, I should say, her match sit in so pop up. Never saw her match since first the world begun. And Benvolio says, tut, you saw her fair, none else being by, herself poised with herself in either eye. But in that crystal scales let there be weighed your lady's love against some other maid. that I will show you shining at this feast, and she shall scant show well that now seems best. And Romeo says, I'll go along, no such sight to be shown, but to rejoice in splendor of mine own. And then they exit. So, Sir Capulet throwing a party. He sends the serving man and over after the guests run into Romeo and Benvolio. They learn about the party and are going because the girl Romeo is interested in that we read about in the previous scene is going to be there. And when you go to a party based off who's going to be there, like oh, you want to come to this party? I don't know, but such and such is going to be there, and you're like, sold. I wouldn't know because I don't get invited to parties, but he's not going to be too invested in her, but he is going to meet someone else of importance at the party. And let's get into it with scene 3. So the synopsis here is that Lady Capulet informs Juliet of Paris's marriage proposal and praises him extravagantly. Juliet says that she has not even dreamed of marrying, but that she will consider Paris as a possible husband if her parents wish her to. And enter Lady Capulet and Nurse. And Lady Capulet says, Nurse, where is my daughter? Call her forth to me. And Nurse says, Now, by my maiden head at 12 years old, I bade her come. What lamb, what ladybird? God forbid. Where's this girl? What Juliet? And then enter Juliet. And Juliet says, How now? Who calls? And Nurse says, Your mother. And Juliet says, Madam, I am here. What is your will? And Lady Capulet says, This is the matter. Nurse, give me leave a while. We must talk in secret. Nurse, come back again. I have remembered me. Thou hear our counsel. Thou knowest my daughters of a pretty age. And Nurse says, Faith, I can tell her age unto an hour. And Lady Capulet says, She's not 14. And Nurse says, I'll lay 14 of my teeth, and yet to my teen be it spoken, I have but 4. She's not 14. How long is it now till Hemmings died? And Lady Capulet says, A fortnight and odd days. And Nurse says, Even or odd, of all days in the year, come Lammas Eve, at night shall she be 14. Susan and she, God rest all Christian souls, were of an age, I should say. Well, Susan is with God. She was too good for me, but, as I said, on Lammas Eve at night shall she be 14. I think it's Lammas Eve. It might be Lammas. That's because Lammas is the 2 L's, so it might be Lammas Eve. But anyway, on Lammas Eve at night shall she be 14. That shall she. Mary, I remember it well. 'Tis since the earthquake now 11 years, and she was weaned. I never shall forget it. Of all the days of the year, upon that day, for I had then laid wormwood to my dug, sitting in the sun under the dove-house wall, my lord and you were then at Mantua. Nay, do I bear a brain, but, as I said, when it did taste the wormwood on the nipple of my dug, and felt it bitter, pretty fool, to see it tetchy, and fall out with the dug. Shake, quoth the dove-house, 'twas no need, I trow, to bid me trudge, and since that time it is 11 years, for then she could stand high lone, nay, but high the rude. She could have run and waddled all about, for even the day before she broke her brow, and then my husband, God be with his soul, he was a merry man, took upon the child. Yea, quoth he, dost thou fall upon thy face? Thou wilt fall backward when thou hast more wit. Wilt thou now, Jewel? And by my holidam, and I don't know if I pronounced that right, and by my holidam, the pretty wretch left crying and said, I, to see now how a jest shall come about. I warrant, and I should live 1,000 years. I never should forget it. Wilt thou not, Jewel? Quoth he. And, pretty fool, it stinted and said, I. And Lady Capulet said, Enough of this, I pray thee, hold thy peace. And Nurse says, Yes, madam, yet I cannot choose but laugh, to think it should leave crying and say, I. And yet, I warrant, it had upon its brow a bump as big as a young cockerel's stone, a perilous knock, and it cried bitterly. Yea, quoth my husband, fall'st upon thy face, thou wilt fall backward when thou comest to age. Wilt thou not, Jewel? It stint and said, Aye. And Juliet said, And stint thou too, I pray thee, nurse, say I. And the nurse says, Peace, I have done. God mark thee to his grace. Thou wast the prettiest babe that e'er I nursed, and I might live to see he married once. I have my wish. And Lady Capulet says, Mary, that Mary is the very theme I came to talk of. Tell me, daughter Juliet, how stands your disposition to be married? And Juliet says, It is an honor that I dream not of. And Nurse says, An honor? Were not I thine only nurse? I would say thou hadst stuck wisdom from thy teat. And Lady Capulet says, Well, think of marriage now. Younger than you here in Verona, ladies of esteem, are made already mothers. By my count, I was your mother much upon these years, that you are now a maid. Thus, then, in brief, the valiant Paris seeks you for his love. And Nurse says, A man, young lady, such a man, has all the world. Why, he's a man of wax. As in Lady Capulet says, Verona's summer hath not such a flower. And Nurse say, Nay, he's a flower, in faith, a very flower. And Lady Capulet say, What say you? Can you love the gentleman? This night you shall behold him at our feast. Read o'er the volume of young Paris's face, and find delight writ there with beauty's pen. Examine every married lineament, and see how one another leads content, and what obscured in this fair volume lies, find written in the margin of his eyes. This precious book of love, this unbound lover, to beautify him only lacks a cover. The fish lives in the sea, and 'tis much pride, from fair without the fair within to hide. That book in many's eyes doth share the glory, that in gold clasps locked in the golden story. So shall you share all that he doth possess, by having him, making yourself no less. And Nurse say, No less, nay, bigger. Women grow by men. And Lady Capulet says, Speak briefly. Can you like of Paris's love? And Julia says, I'll look to like, if looking liking move. But no more deep will I dart mine eye, then your consent gives strength to make it fly. And then enter the serving man. And the serving man says, Madam, the guests are come, supper served up. You called, my young lady asked for. The nurse cursed in the pantry, and everything in extremity. I must hence to wait. I beseech you, follow straight. And Lady Capulet says, We follow thee. And then the serving man exits. And Juliet, and then she says, Juliet, the country stays, or the county stays. And the nurse says, Go, girl, seek happy nights to happy days. And they exit. So, pretty much, talking, Lady Capulet and the nurse are talking with Juliet pretty much about the marriage and about Paris's offer of marriage, and Paris is going to be at this party that the Capulets are throwing, and so Juliet essentially going to scout him out and essentially be wed off to him, and I believe this was during the days of arranged marriages and stuff like that. So Juliet says, while I really don't want to be married, for you, I will. Oh, Mom, I will. For you, who and yeah, I think that's sometimes relatable or when your parents like someone and you're like, man, my parents really like you, so I might stay with you. That's not always the case, but in some cases that's the case. But now we move into scene 4 here. So the synopsis here is Romeo and Benvolio approach, I should say, the Capulets' party with their friend Mercutio and others, wearing the disguises customarily donned by maskers. Romeo is anxious because of an ominous dream. Mercutio mocks him with a speech about a dream-giving queen of fairies, and enter Romeo, Mercutio, Benvolio with 5 or 6 other maskers, torchbearers, and a boy with a drum. And Romeo says, What shall this speech be spoke for our excuse, or shall we on without apology? And the Benvolio says, the date is out of such prolixity, such prolixity. I think that's how it's pronounced, prolixity. The date is out of such prolixity. We'll have no Cupid hoodwinked with a scarf, being a Tartar's painted bow of lath, scarring the ladies like a crow keeper, nor her no without prologue, faintly spoke, after the prompter for our entrance. But let them measure us by what they will. We'll measure them a measure and be gone. And Romeo says, give me a torch. I am not for this ambling. Being but heavy, I will bear the light. And Mercutio says, nay, gentle Romeo, we must have you dance. And Romeo says, not I, believe me. You will have dancing shoes with nimble soles. You have dancing shoes with nimble soles. I have a soul of lead, so stakes me to the ground I cannot move. And Mercutio says, you are a lover. Borrow Cupid's wings, and soar with them above a common bound. And Romeo says, I am too sore and pierced with his shaft, to soar with his light feathers, and so bound, I cannot bound a pitch above dull woe. Under love's heavy burden do I sink. And Mercutio says, and to sink in it should you burden love, too great oppression for a tender thing. And Romeo says, is love a tender thing? It is too rough, too rude, too boisterous, and it pricks like thorn. And Mercutio says, if love be rough with you, be rough with love. Prick love for pricking, and you beat love down. Give me a case to put my visage in, a visor for a visor. What care I, what curious eye doth coat deformities? Here are the beetle brows shall blush for me. And the village says, come, knock and enter, and no sooner in, but every man betake him to his legs. And Romeo says, a torch for me. Let wantons light of hearts tickle the senseless rushes with their heads. For I am proverbed with a grandsire phrase, I'll be a candle holder and look on. The game was ne'er so fair, and I am done. And Mercutio says, tut, done's the mouse, the constable's own word. If thou art done, we'll draw thee from the mire. Or, save your reverence, love wherein thou strickest. Up to the ears. Come, we burn daylight. Oh. And Romeo says, nay, that's not so. And Mercutio says, I mean, sir, in delay, we waste our lights in vain. Lights by day. Take our good meaning, for our judgment sits 5 times in that air, once in our 5 wits. And Romeo says, and we mean well in going to this mask, but 'tis no wit to go. And Mercutio says, why, may one ask? And Romeo says, I dreamt a dream tonight. And Mercutio said, and so did I. And Romeo says, well, what was yours? And Mercutio said that dreamers often lie. And Romeo says, in bed asleep while they do dream things true. And Mercutio says, oh, then I see Queen Mab hath been with you. She is the fairy's midwife, and she comes in shape no bigger than an agate stone, on the forefinger of an alderman, drawn with a team of little atomi over men's noses as they lie asleep. Her wagon spokes made of long spinner's legs, the cover of the wings of grasshoppers, her traces of the smallest spider web, her collars of the moonshine's watery beams, her whip of cricket's bone, the lash of film, her wagoner a small gray-coated gnat, not half so big as a round little worm, pricked from the lazy finger of a maid. Her chariot is an empty hazelnut, made by the joiner squirrel or old grub. Time out, O mine, the fairies' coachmakers, and in the state she gallops night by night, through lovers' brains, and then they dream of love, on courtiers' knees that dream on coursiers' straight, o'er lawyers' fingers, who straight dream on fees, or ladies' lips, who straight on kisses dream, which oft the angry Mab with blisters plagues, because their breasts with the sweat heat meats tainted are. Sometimes she gallops o'er a courtier's nose, and then dreams he of smelling out a suit. And sometime comes she with a tithe pig's tail, tickling a parson's nose as he lies asleep. Then he dreams of another benefice. Sorry about that. Sometimes she driveth o'er a soldier's neck, and then dreams he of cutting foreign throats, of breaches, ambuscados, Spanish blades, of health's 5 fathom deep, and then anon drums in his ear, at which he starts and wakes, and, being thus frighted, swears a prayer or two, and sleeps again. This is that very mab that plats the manes of horses in the night, and bakes the efflux and foul sluttish hairs, which once untangled much misfortune bodes. This is the hag, when maids lie on their backs, that presses them and learns them first to bear, making them women of good carriage. This is she. And Romeo says, Peace, peace, Mercutio, peace. Thou talkest of nothing. And Mercutio says, True, I talk of dreams, which are the children of an idle brain, and begots of nothing but vain fantasy, which is as thin of substance as the air, and more inconstant than the wind, who woos even now the frozen bosom of the north, and, being angered, puffs away from thence, turning aside to the dew-dropping south. Benvolio says, This wind you talk of blows us from ourselves. Supper is done, and we shall come too late. And Romeo says, I fear too early, for my mind misgives. Some consequence yet hanging in the stars shall bitterly begin his fearful dates. With this night revels, and expire the term of a despised life closed in my breast, by some vile forfeit of untimely death. But he that hath the steerage of my course, direct my sail on lusty gentlemen, on lusty gentlemen, I should say. And Benvolio says, Strike, drum, and they march about the stage and then withdraw to the side. So, here we see them making their way into the party. They're about to sneak their way into the party, and we see Mercutio, kind of sort of jabbing at Romeo a little bit, about how he's going through, but also them talking about dreams and love and romance. And Romeo, as we can see, not really that big into the idea of romance either, or so. So that's interesting that both Romeo and Juliet and not necessarily super duper into romance, not really feeling romance, especially Romeo with what he's going through with the girl that he likes doesn't like him back. So, it's interesting that they have that juxtaposed to what's going to happen with Romeo and Juliet later on. But now, finally, we move into Scene 5 to close out Act 1. And the synopsis here is that Capulets welcome the disguised Romeo and his friends. Romeo, watching the dance, is caught by the beauty of Juliet. Overhearing Romeo ask about her, Tybalt recognizes his voice and is enraged at the intrusion. Romeo then meets Juliet, and they fall in love. Not until they are separated do they discover that they belong to enemy houses. And the serving men come forth with napkins. And the first serving man says, Where's Pop 10 that he helps not to take away? He shift a trencher. He scrape a trencher. And second serving man says, When good manners shall lie all in one or two's men's hand. When good manners shall lie all in one or two men's hand, and they unwashed too, 'tis a foul thing. Excuse me. And then the first serving man says, Away with the joint stools. Remove the court cupboard. Look to the plate. Good thou, save me a piece of marchpane, and as thou loves me, let the porter let in Susan Grindstone and Nell, Anthony and Poptan. And the third serving man says, Aye, boy, ready. And the first serving man says, You are looked for and called for, asked for and sought for, in the great chamber. And the third serving man says, We cannot be here and there too. Cheerly, boys, be brisk a while, and the long her liver take all. And they move aside. So, then enter Capulet and his household, all the guests and gentlewomen, to Romeo, Mercutio, Benvolio, and the other maskers. Excuse me. And the Capulet, and Sir Capulet says, Welcome, gentlemen, and ladies that have their toes, unplagued with corns, will walk about with you. Ah, my mistresses, which of you all will now deny to dance? She that makes dainty, she, I'll swear, hath corns. Am I come near you now? Welcome, gentlemen. I have seen the day that I have worn a visor and could tell a whispering tale in a fair lady's ear, such as would please. 'Tis gone, 'tis gone, 'tis gone. You are welcome, gentlemen. Come, musicians, play. And the music plays and they dance. And a hall, give room. And foot it, girls. More lights, you knaves, and turn the tables up, and quench the fire. The room is grown too hot. Ah, sirrah, this unlooked for sport comes well. Nay, sit, good cousin Capulet, for you and I are past our dancing days. How long is it now since last yourself and I were in a mask? And Capulet's cousin says, by our lady, 30 years. And Capulet says, what, man, 'tis not so much, 'tis not so much. 'Tis since the nuptial of Lucentio. Come, Pentecost, as quickly as it will, some 25 years, and then we masked. And Capulet's cousin says, 'Tis more, 'tis more. His son is elder, sir. His son is 30. And Capulet says, will you tell me that? His son was but a ward 2 years ago. And Romeo to a Surveyman says, what lady's that which doth enrich the hand of yonder knight? And the Surveyman says, I know not, sir. And Romeo says, oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night, as a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear. Beauty too rich for use, for earth too dear. So shows a snowy dove, trooping with crows, as yonder lady o'er her fellows shows. The measure done, I'll watch her place of stand, and touching hers, makes bless my rude hand. Did my heart love till now? For swear its sight, for I ne'er saw true beauty till this night. And Tybalt says, this, by his voice, should be a Montague. Fetch my rapier, boy. And Page exits. And it says, what dares the slave come hither covered with an antic face, to fleer and scorn at our solemnity? Solemnity. Pretty much like solemn, but itty. But anyway, now by the stock and honor of my kin, to strike him dead I hold it not a sin. And Capulet says, why, how now, kinsman, wherefore storm you so? And Tybalt says, uncle, this is a Montague, our foe, a villain that is hither come in spite, to scorn at our solemnity this night. Hey, I think I pronounced it right that time. But Capulet says, young Romeo is it? And Tybalt says, 'tis he, that villain Romeo. Oh, and Capulet says, content thee, gentle cause, let him alone. He bears him like a portly gentleman. And to say truth, Verona brags of him to be a virtuous and well-governed youth. I would not for the wealth of all this town here in my house do him disparagement. Therefore be patient, take no note of him. It is my will, the which if thou respect, show a fair presence and put off these frowns, and ill-beseeming semblance for a feast. And Tybalt says, it fits when such a villain is a guest. I'll not endure him. And Capulet, it says, he shall be endured. What, God, hoodman boy? I say he shall. Go to. And am I the master here or you? Go to. You'll not endure him. God shall mend my soul. Oh. You'll make a mutiny among my guests. You'll set cock-a-hoop. You'll be the man. And Tybalt says, why, uncle? 'Tis a shame. And Capulet says, go to. You are a saucy boy. Is it so indeed? This trick may chance to scathe you. I know what. You must contrary me. Marry, 'tis time. Well said, my hearts. You are a Hincox. Go. Be quiet, or more light. For shame, I'll make you quiet. What, cheerly, my hearts? And Tybalt says, patience perforce with wilful choler meeting makes my flesh tremble in their different greeting. I will withdraw, but this intrusion shall, now seeming sweet, convert to bitterest gall. And he exits. And Romeo, taking Juliet's hand, he says, if I profane with my unworthiest hand this holy shrine, the gentle sin is this. My lips, two blushing pilgrims, ready stand to smooth that rough touch with a tender kiss. And Juliet says, good pilgrim, you do wrong your hand too much, which mannerly devotion shows in this. For saints have hands that pilgrims' hands do touch, and palm to palm is holy palmer's kiss. And Romeo says, have not saints lips, and holy palmers too? And Juliet says, I, pilgrim, lips that they must use in prayer. And Romeo says, oh then, dear saints, let lips do what hands do. They pray, grant thou, lest faith turn to despair. And Juliet says, saints do not move, though grant for prayer's sake. And Romeo says, then move not while my prayer's effect I take. And he kisses her. Thus from my lips, by thine, my sin is purged. And Juliet says, then have my lips the sin that they have took. And Romeo says, sin from my lips? O trespass sweetly urged, give me my sin again. And he kisses her again. And Juliet says, you kiss by the book. And Nurse says, madam, your mother craves a word with you. And Juliet moves toward her mother. And Romeo says, what is her mother? And Nurse says, Mary, bachelor. Her mother is the lady of the house, and a good lady, and a wise and virtuous. I nursed her daughter that you talked withal. I tell you, he that can lay hold of her shall have the chinks. And the nurse moves away, and Romeo aside says, is she a Capulet? Oh, dear Count, my life is my foe's debt. And Benvolio says, away, be gone, the sport is at the best. And Romeo says, aye, so I fear, the more is my unrest. And Sir Capulet says, nay, gentlemen, prepare not to be gone. We have a trifling foolish banquet towards. Is it e'en so? Why then, I thank you all. I thank you, honest gentlemen. Good night. More torches here. Come on then, let's to bed. Ah, sirrah, but I my fay, it waxes late. I'll to my rest. And all but Juliet and the nurse begin to exit. And Juliet says, come hither, nurse. What is yon gentleman? And nurse says, the son and heir of old Tibero. And Juliet says, what is he that now is going out of door? And the nurse says, Mary, that I think be young Petruchio. And Juliet says, what's he that follows here that would not dance? And the nurse says, I know not. And Juliet asks, go ask his name. And the nurse goes, and Juliet says, if he be married, my grave is like to be my wedding bed. And the nurse returning says, his name is Romeo, and a Montague, the only son of your greatest enemy. And Juliet says, my only love sprung from my only hate, too early seen unknown, and known too late. Prodigious birth of love is to me, that I must love a loathed enemy. And the nurse says, what's this? What's this? And Juliet says, a rhyme I learned even now, of one I dance withal. One calls within, Juliet. And nurse says, anon, anon. Come, let's away. The strangers are all gone. And they exit. So, that is the end of Act 1. And as you can see, I'm kind of breaking it down scene by scene. And here, Romeo, of course, meets Juliet. And as soon as he meets Juliet, he forgets all about that other girl. He's like, hey, that other girl, forget about her. Or you, who take your hand, and what's your name? And but we see here them interact. They kiss a couple times. Romeo kisses Juliet a couple times, and then they learn that they're technically enemies. Romeo being a Montague, Juliet being a Capulet. It's interesting that Sir Capulet realizes it's Romeo but lets them stay, pretty much not to cause like a scene. Essentially, is in order to like save face. I don't know if a lot of people would be willing to do that. Like if someone's a sworn enemy and then they just wander into your party, you might be a little cross about that. But Capulet lets it go. Tybalt wants to. Tybalt's like itching to do something. Like, yo, oh, that's Romeo. Let's get him. And Capulet's like, no. Like, we're not gonna cause a scene. We're not gonna do any of that. We're just gonna let it rock. So they essentially do that. And Romeo getting bold, getting a little bit handsy with Juliet. And I imagine Paris is there and may or may not have noticed. So that's gonna be something of interest to keep in mind with the book, and I should say with the rest of the play, and now we see even more conflicting feelings between Romeo and Juliet. The fact that they're in love with essentially their enemies is because, of course, the Montagues and the Capulets are are at war with each other. They don't like each other. So their greatest love now comes out of their worst enemy. He and I'll add an interesting dynamic for the rest of this play. But ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it for Act One, and remember, every week we're going to continue on with Romeo and Juliet. Yeah, but it's getting kind of interesting so far. But nevertheless, that's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor: like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends, turn on post notifications so you know every time I upload a video, so you can see as soon as it drops. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on the play so far, and your thoughts on my analysis of it and my reading of it. I know I tripped up on some words, but we're gonna get there. But thank you all so much for watching. I will see you guys later. Peace.